Oh, and we're not paying for her, my daughter-in-law told the waiter. She'll be separate. She said it warmly, the way you'd mention a food allergy. And she said her about a woman sitting 18 inches away from her at the table. It was my son's birthday. The first Saturday in October, Halloran's, the six of us, at the round table by the window, Dean, his wife Melissa, my grandchildren, and my husband Walt beside me working a roll apart with his thumbs the way he's done for 48 years. I put my hand flat on the tablecloth. That's what I used to do when a banquet started coming apart. 200 plates, a wrong count, a bride's mother crying in the hallway, and the most important thing in the world was that I not move. 34 years running banquets at the Ashmont Hotel, and the body still does it for you whether you want it to or not. Dean's face did something. Then it stopped doing it. He picked up his fork and turned it over and set it back down in the same place. Poppy, who is 9, was drawing on the paper placemat and did not look up. Nate had his knees on the chair. The server was young. 22, 23. Kayla, according to the little pin. She frowned at her book. She flipped a page. She wasn't embarrassed. She was confused, which is different. And I know the difference, because I've trained 1,100 servers and confusion looks like arithmetic. I'm sorry, she said. The table's on the house account, so it's all one check. She looked at me. Mrs. Alden, did you want the whole account, or just tonight? And she put the folio in my hand. Melissa went quiet. Not a gasp, not a flush. People think that's what it looks like. It isn't. Melissa simply stopped talking in the middle of a sentence about the wine list and did not start again. And her eyes went somewhere to the left of my shoulder. And I have watched 10,000 people at tables, and I know exactly what that is. That is a person recalculating. That is a person going back through the last 90 seconds looking for the exact place the ground moved. 4 seconds. That's all I had, the thing. Here's what nobody tells you about a career. Your eyes don't ask permission. Mine went where they have always gone, down the right-hand column, before I had any idea I wanted them to. Tonight's line, 6 covers. Correct. And above it, because Kayla had printed the whole thing, August 7th, 19 covers. September 4th, 22 covers. October 2nd, 24 covers. Melissa's hand came across the table and took the folio, and her voice came back on like a lamp. Teddy set that up for us months ago. Light. Already smiling. It's just easier for the business dinners than putting everything on the card. I settle it every month, Francis. I promise. I hadn't asked. That's the part I kept, later, when I was trying to sort out what I actually knew. She answered a question that nobody at that table had put to her. She hadn't known the account was in my name. She'd known there was an account. That was the difference. And it cost her about 4 seconds to find it. Of course, I said. And then the fish came. And Nate told us about a boy named Owen who can dislocate his thumb. And Walt said that wasn't a talent. That was a symptom. And Poppy laughed so hard, she had to put her head on the table. And for about 11 minutes we were just a family having dinner. It was a nice birthday. Dean got a candle in a slice of chocolate cake he didn't ask for and blew it out like he was 39 years younger. And Melissa filmed it, and I sang along with everybody else. And the whole time, some other part of me was noting that the room was running 4 minutes behind on entree, and the new host was seating by convenience instead of by pace, which meant that kitchen would be underwater by 7:15. You sit down at a table as a guest, and half of you is still standing beside it. Outside, the steps at Halloran's had gone slick, the first real cold of the season, that thin black shine on the concrete. Walt is 74, and his left knee is a matter of public record. Melissa got there before I did. She put her hand under his elbow and took the whole first step with him, patient, not making a thing of it, talking about the fish so he wouldn't feel handled. She's always been good to Walt. 11 years, and I have never once had to ask. I stood at the bottom in the cold, with my coat over my arm, and I hated how much that complicated things. In the car, I didn't say anything. Walt had the heat on his knees and Poppy was in the back singing something with a clapping part. And there is a version of me that says, "What was that?" at the table, right there in the parking lot with the engine running. I have never been that woman, not once. You don't make a scene in a dining room, you handle it in the hallway, or on Monday. Melissa may not know that about me, or she may know it better than I do. That was strange, Walt said, when we were on division. The check thing. I said. He let it go. He's good that way. At home, I hung up my coat and put the kettle on and stood in the kitchen for a while without turning the overhead light on, which is not like me either. Then I went to the refrigerator. I keep a paper calendar on the door, the kind the credit union sends at Christmas, because I like to see the month all at once. September was still clipped underneath October. I flipped it up. September 4th, a Thursday. I'd written Tuesday, P and N on the 5th in my own hand, and nothing on the 4th, because there was nothing to write. But I'd asked her about it. I remembered asking, in this kitchen, with the kettle going, because I'd wanted to know whether they'd be around that weekend. Just 6 of us, Melissa had said. Nothing special. 22 covers. I stood there with the calendar page held up in 2 fingers and did the only arithmetic that mattered, which wasn't the money at all. 16 people had sat down to dinner on my account in September, and I didn't know a single one of their names or one word of what they'd been told. I called her Monday morning, and I had my sentence ready. I'd worked it out over the weekend, the way I used to work out a difficult phone call with a bride's father. Say the accommodating thing first, so the other person doesn't have to defend anything. Nobody tells you the truth while they're braced. I want to take over that account. I said, whatever's on it, going forward too. It's my name, it's my responsibility, and I should have closed it years ago. I had my checkbook out on the counter. That was the whole plan, and I'm not proud of how simple it was. Money is a door you can close. If Melissa had been floating business dinners on an old hotel account because they were short and embarrassed about it, then I'd pay it and never say another word about it to anyone, including Dean, and we'd all go on. Frances. She sounded delighted. Genuinely, I've learnt to hear the difference, and this was the real thing. That is so kind. But it's not costing you anything. Honestly, I settle it the 1st of every month, in person. I've never once been late. It's just easier this way. I'd still rather... You'd have to go down there and do paperwork and sit with Teddy for an hour. A little laugh. Let me handle it. It's the one thing I'm actually good at. And then she asked how Walt's knee was doing in the cold, and I said better with the heat pad, and we talked about Nate's tooth for 6 minutes, and I hung up holding a pen over a blank check. I put the pen down. In 11 years I have offered Melissa money, perhaps 9 times for the car repair, for Poppy's dance thing, for the roof, and she has taken it 8. She is not a proud person about money, she's practical. So what was I offering her that she didn't want? I made a cup of tea. I didn't drink, and sat in the front room and went back through the year, the way you'd go back through a stack of invoices when the total doesn't match. The first Thursday of every month. Work thing. She'd said it so often it had stopped being information. I'd never once wondered about it, because pharmaceutical salespeople have dinners. That's the whole job. In February, she'd asked me to write out my title. My actual title, spelled correctly, with the years. Director of Banquets and Catering, Ashmont Hotel, 1985 to 2019. She said it was for a bio thing. I remember being flattered enough to write it neatly. And I let all of it go on. And I made myself say the honest part out loud, in an empty room, because I have found that's the only way I'll actually admit to it. I let it go on because of Poppy and Nate. Tuesdays are mine. 3:15 at the school. And then whatever we can get away with before dinner. If I make Melissa my enemy, Tuesdays become a favour, and a favour can be withdrawn. But there's a second reason, and it's smaller and it's worse. Melissa is the only person left who asks me about the Ashmont. Walt lived through it with me and doesn't need the stories. Dean was raised in the middle of it and finds it boring the way you find your own childhood boring. My friends from the hotel are scattered or gone. And here was this woman who'd ask, over a glass of wine, how did you turn a room in 20 minutes, and then actually listen to the answer? I have been lonely for my own competence. That's a ridiculous thing to be lonely for at 71. She was feeding it, and I ate. Tuesday, 3:15. Nate got in the car and announced that his tooth was now what he called a hanging situation, and demonstrated, and Poppy said he was going to swallow it in his sleep and die. And I said, nobody has ever died of that. And Nate asked whether I was sure, and I said, I was a person who had served dinner to 11,000 people, and I would have heard. Poppy taught me a hand clap rhyme at the kitchen table. It has a part where you cross over, and I couldn't get it, and she was so patient with me. She kept saying, no, but you almost had it. 9 years old, and already the kind of person who says you almost had it. I don't know how to explain what it costs to look at that and understand that it sits on the other side of a decision. Dean came by Thursday to fix the storm door, which has been sticking since March. He was on the step with the screwdriver in his teeth when I asked him carefully, one question, the way you'd ask about weather. How's the business going? Melissa's thing? Good, I think. He didn't look up. She's kept the sales job on top of it, which is nuts. I don't know how she does the hours. She's still doing the territory. Far as I know, he got the screw started. She's gone a lot. I stopped asking about it. She gets short with me. He wasn't hiding anything. I've known that boy 43 years, and there is nothing in him that can hide. He just didn't know, and he thought he did, which is the worse of the two. He got the door closing again, but the sweep along the bottom was shot, and he didn't have one on the truck. He said he'd bring one. I thanked him and gave him half a coffee cake to take home. The first Thursday of November was still a month out, but the first Thursday of October had come and gone the week before the birthday dinner. And I found myself, that evening, driving down Union with no particular reason to be there. The garden room at Halloran's sits off the back, with that warped glass wall, the old kind, where the trees outside go wavy. Danny Halloran's father built it in 1996, and he built it for us. The Ashmont had a ballroom that could seat 300, and not one room in the building where 4 people could hear each other talk. So every rehearsal dinner and anniversary and quiet 20-person thing I couldn't feed, I sent down the hill to him. He had me lay the floor out, because I was the one sending him the business. In season, you cannot get that room. May through October, it's booked solid with weddings and boat people. The lights were on. I slowed and counted the cars in the side lot out of pure habit. 11. And then I drove home, because I don't walk into a dining room and ask a question in front of people. I never have. I turned onto division and felt the whole shape of my own character working against me, which is a thing you can feel, apparently, at 71, in a Buick. She called me Sunday. Francis, I want to ask you something, and I want you to say no if it's too much. All right. The November dinner, the 6th. A pause with a smile in it. Would you come? Something in me sat up, because in 10 months of first Thursdays, I had never once been asked. To dinner? Not the whole thing, God. You'd be bored. Just come for the first 20 minutes, so people can meet you. I looked at the calendar on the refrigerator door. Why? I said. And she said it easily, the way you'd say the sky was blue, with no weight on it at all. Because it helps. I stood there a long moment after she'd hung up. For 10 months, I'd assumed I was being left out of those dinners. I hadn't been left out. I'd been saved. The call that changed it came Wednesday afternoon, and it wasn't from anybody in my family. Mrs. Alden, it's Dana. Dana Pruitt, Roseanne's daughter. It took me a second, and then it didn't. Roseanne Pruitt worked the Ashmont front desk with me for 19 years. She could talk a man out of a complaint in 90 seconds, and she smoked outside the loading dock in all weather, and she died in 2016. Her daughter runs the flower shop on Front Street now, Sable and Stem. I've walked past the window 100 times. Dana, of course. I hope this isn't strange. I got your number from the church directory. She was nervous, which made her fast. I just wanted to say thank you. That's all. I've been meaning to for weeks, and then I thought, you know what, just call her. Thank me for what, honey? For being part of it. A laugh, embarrassed and pleased. Mom always said you were the smartest woman in that building. She said the hotel ran because you ran it. And I just think it's amazing that you're backing something like this at your age. I mean that as a compliment. I'm sorry. That came out wrong. I was standing at the counter with a dish towel in my hand. Dana, I said, say the name of it for me. Verdant House. I'd never heard the words in my life. And what did you put in? 2,500. She said it lightly. It was not a light number for a woman running a flower shop on Front Street in a town that empties out in November. Founding member. Which honestly I had to think about, but Melissa said the founding tier closes at 15 and there were only a few left. And I mean, with you involved. I asked how many others. She counted out loud. She named 11 people she knew of. 2 of them I taught to fold a napkin. They do the dinners the first Thursday, she said. That's where you sign. It's so nice they do it in that back room with the wavy glass. Dana, I said, thank you for calling. It was good to hear your voice. I have thought about that hundreds of times since. I could have told her right then. It would have taken 11 words. I didn't, and the reason I didn't is not a good one, but it's the true one. I didn't yet know the shape of the thing, and I have never in my life reported a problem before I understood it. You don't tell the bride there's a problem in the kitchen. You go find out what the problem is first. I don't remember hanging up. I know I did, because the phone was in its cradle afterward. What I remember is the dish towel on the floor, and not knowing when I dropped it, and that I didn't pick it up for a long time. It wasn't the money. I want to be exact about this, because I've been accused since of caring about the wrong thing. Roseanne Pruitt's daughter gave $2,500 to a woman she'd met twice, because my name was on the room. That's what she bought, not a wellness collective, whatever that is. She bought the idea that Francis Alden had looked at this and said yes. Roseanne stood beside me at that desk for 19 years and told her daughter I was the smartest woman in the building, and her daughter cashed that in, and I hadn't been in the room. And there were 11 more. Every one of them, somebody's daughter. Half of them, I'd have bet. People who'd worked for me, or worked for someone who had. I sat down at the kitchen table and stayed there until the light changed. I went to Halloran's Tuesday morning at 20 to 11. That hour is a secret. The dinner house is a different building, at 10:40 house lights, up, chairs down, a boy running a vacuum, somebody's radio on in the back. The whole thing stripped to its bones. Nobody performs at 10:40. It's the only time you can get a straight answer out of a restaurant. Teddy Nakashima came out from the office in a sweater instead of a jacket and said, Mrs. Alden. The way he has said it since he was 19 years old. I hired him at the Ashmont in 1996, 19 years old, to bus tables in the ballroom. He broke 16 glasses in one shift, I counted. And I didn't fire him, because a boy who breaks 16 glasses is a boy who's moving. 2 years later, I sent him down the hill to Danny's father, who needed hands, and I told him exactly what he was getting. He runs the whole house now. He has run it for 11 years. He still won't call me Francis. I asked him if he'd pull the account file for me. He didn't move right away. That's the part I noticed. He stood there for about a second and a half with something going on behind his face, weighing whether to ask me a question first. And then he decided against it and went and got the box. It's a card box, actual cards, because Danny's father never trusted a screen, and Teddy never bothered to change it. And now it's a charming thing they mention on the website. He put the card on the bar in front of me. Cream stock, soft at the corners, my handwriting. Alden, F., Ashmont, Overflow House, approve all. 1996. I could see the pen pressure. I bore down harder in those days. The loops are bigger than the ones I make now. A woman in her 40s, in a hurry, setting up a courtesy line, so that when the Ashmont overbooked, I could send guests down the hill for dinner and not make them argue about it at the door. It ran for 23 years. When the hotel sold in 2019, the account should have been closed, and it wasn't, because nobody closes anything. And because I'll say this part too, it pleased me that my name was still in a box in a restaurant in this town. Underneath, in a different pen, in handwriting that was not mine, a line added last December. Standing, first Thursday, garden room, hold. I put one finger on it. When was this added? December, Teddy said. Your daughter-in-law came in the week after Christmas. And she said what, exactly? He was careful. Not evasive careful, which is different, and it's how I'd have done it too. She introduced herself as Francis Alden's daughter-in-law. She said she was handling your events now. My events. And you didn't call me? No, ma'am. He looked straight at me when he said it, which I respected. She knew the account number. She knew you'd opened it in 96. She knew you had approval. A pause. I assumed you knew. Of course he did. Anyone would have. Has anything gone unpaid? Not once. She's here the first of the month with cash or card. She's... He stopped himself, then said it anyway. She's very good with the staff. They like her. Teddy said, Mrs. Alden, is there a problem? And I said, no. I have wondered about that since too. But he's a general manager with a floor to run and a family, and whatever this was, it was mine, and I was not going to make it his and then leave. I thanked him. I said the room looked well. I meant it. In the car, I didn't start the engine for a while. There was a grocery receipt on the passenger seat and a pen in the door. I wrote, 12 times 2,500 is 30,000. Then, under it, because I didn't know and wanted to be honest about not knowing, tier closes at 15. 24 covers on the 2nd of October. 12 seats sold out of 15. The rest of that table was being shown the room. And then I sat there and understood the thing I'd been circling for 2 weeks. She has never taken $1 off that account. She pays it the first of every month, in cash, and she has never once been late. There's no balance. There's nothing to collect. I'd been getting ready to write a check to a woman who wasn't spending my money. She's spending my name. She's been doing it in a room I laid out with a pencil. In a restaurant where my card has been sitting in a box for 23 years past its usefulness because I liked being remembered, and I never closed it. I looked up Verdant House that night, on the laptop Dean set up for me 2 Christmases ago. It took 9 minutes to find everything there was, which should tell you something on its own. The website is beautiful. I'll give her that pale green, thin letters, a lot of white space around, not very much. A hospitality forward wellness collective for Northern Michigan. I read that sentence 4 times and could not have told you what it sells. The address on the contact page is 231 East Front, Suite 4. I have been walking past 231 East Front since Nixon. It's the mailbox place, between the bank and the shoe repair. Suite 4 is a box with a brass door about the size of a bread loaf. There's a photograph on the front page of the garden room. Empty, evening, candles lit, the warped glass going soft behind it. It's taken from the 3rd seat on the north side of the long table. I know that because I know what that room looks like from every chair in it, and because that's where she sits. I've seen her sit there. And further down, on a page called Our Gatherings, There was a photograph of me, my 70th birthday, the Legion Hall in April. Melissa took something like 40 pictures that day, and I'd thought nothing of it. And here was one of them, cropped tight, me laughing at something, in the green, with Melissa's hand up beside mine like we'd just won an election. No caption, no names. I've gone back and looked at the rest of those 40 since. I am in almost none of them by myself. And then, near the bottom, a heading, Our Advisors. No names, not one. Just a line of that thin type. 3 decades of Northern Michigan hospitality leadership. I sat back in the chair. She never used my name. Not on paper. Not anywhere a person could point to it and say there. She wrote it there. She'd taken the coat off the hook and worn it out of the house and left the name tag hanging in the closet. That's not carelessness. That's care. Somebody thought about that. I bought $40 of flowers on Friday that I had nowhere to put. I let Dana wrap them, and while she was doing it, I asked her pleasant, curious, an old woman making conversation what exactly Melissa had told her about my involvement. She didn't hesitate for a second. People don't, when they haven't done anything wrong. She said you were half in. Half in. Her words. She said, Francis is half in, and the other half is her husband saying slow down. Dana laughed. Which I thought was so funny, because Mum always said you never went slow at anything. She tied the paper with a piece of green twine and told me to come back before the holidays. I got to the car and sat with the flowers across my lap and had to open the window even though it was 38 degrees. There's a physical thing that happens when you let somebody go on believing something. It sits high in the chest, under the collarbone, and it does not move when you swallow. 9 days by then, 9 days of knowing enough. Here's what stopped me, and I'm going to say it plainly, because I've had people since imply that I hesitated out of weakness. If I move on this, Dean finds out. Not in a kind way, not from me sitting down with him gently. He finds out that his wife has been renting his mother out to strangers in a back room for 10 months, and he finds out because I made it happen, and there is no version of that where I am not. Forever, the person who did that to his marriage. And Melissa will not go quietly. I'd become the mother-in-law who couldn't stand seeing her succeed. It half writes itself in her favor. And then Tuesdays. Not a threat. She'd never threaten it. It would just become difficult. Poppy has a thing. Nate's got the sniffles. 3:15 at the school stops happening, and nobody ever has to say why. I sat with that at the kitchen table on Saturday night for a long time. Long enough that the coffee went cold, and I made more, and let that go cold too. Walt came through in his robe for his pills. He has said maybe 40 words about any of this since the birthday dinner, because that's how he is. He doesn't pick things up until you set them down in front of him. He filled his glass at the sink. He looked at me sitting there with 2 full cold cups. You've never once let a room go bad, he said, because it would be awkward to fix it. Then he took his pills and went to bed. Wednesday, 20 to 11, Halloran's. The chairs down, the vacuum going, the radio in the back. Teddy came out in the sweater. 3 things, I said, and then I'll let you get on. He got a pen. Close the account. Today. Whenever you can do it, but before the 1st of the month. He wrote it down. Take my name off the file. All of it. If there's a note anywhere that says Alden, take it off. He wrote that too. He hadn't looked up yet. And release the standing hold. First Thursday's garden room. Give it back. Then he looked up. He didn't ask why. He had the question in his face for about half a second, and he put it away. The way I taught him to put things away when he was 19 years old and dropping glasses. He just said, for the rest of the season, or all of it, give me nothing back. Yes, ma'am. He went to the terminal at the end of the bar, and I stood there while he did it, because I wanted to see it done, and because I didn't trust myself to be the sort of woman who could leave a thing half-finished if somebody said one kind sentence to me on the way out. It took him under 2 minutes. And here's what you have to understand about a room like that, in a town like this. The garden room is 14 tables with a wall of 100-year-old glass in a resort town in Michigan. It goes at the end of the summer, for the following year. There is a waiting list that isn't called a waiting list. Teddy's phone buzzed while I was still standing there. He glanced at it, and then he looked at me, and something in his expression had changed. "Mrs. Alden," he said carefully. "The events office just took the first Thursdays into a wedding block, through May." I hadn't left the building yet. "Through May," I said. "They've been asking since August." So that was that. Not a document, not a lawyer. A woman in an office 200 feet away, doing her job well, at the exact moment I stopped standing in her way. "One more thing," I said. "The card, I'd like it." He didn't have to give it to me. It's their box. But he went and got it and put it in my hand, and I put it in my coat pocket, and it weighed nothing at all. Tuesday still happened, because Tuesday hadn't been cancelled yet, and that was its own particular cruelty. Nate got in the car and opened his mouth wide and pointed into the gap with both hands, like a man showing you an engine. The tooth had come out in a grilled cheese. He had it in a plastic bag from the nurse, and he was going to sleep with it under his pillow and not swallow it. Grandma, because I checked. Poppy had drawn me a picture. She'd been working on it at school. It was the garden room. She's been in there twice, for rehearsal dinners, and she'd gotten the wavy wall. She'd drawn the glass all crooked on purpose. And she'd written across the top, in her careful 9-year-old letters, "The fancy room." I said it was the best drawing anybody had ever made of that room. I drove them home and walked them to the door and waved at the window. I did not cry until I was 3 blocks away, and then I pulled over on Wadsworth and did it properly, with both hands on the wheel, for about 4 minutes. The text came Thursday evening. A photograph, taken on a kitchen counter, of a stack of invitations still banded together. Heavy cream card, letterpressed, that little dent you can feel with your thumb. You don't get those in 3 days, and you don't get them cheap. Verdant House, founding dinner, the garden room at Halloran's, Thursday, November 6th. And under the picture from Melissa, "They came. Wear the green. You look incredible in the green. And don't worry, I won't put words in your mouth. Just say you believe in it. That's all anyone needs." I sat with the phone in my hand at my own kitchen table, with a drawing of that room on the refrigerator behind me. She'd had them printed before she confirmed the room. And in 10 months of first Thursdays, in 300 days of lending my name to strangers, it had never crossed her mind, not once, not for a second, not enough to make her check that I might not. I asked them to come Saturday morning. I didn't say why. My kitchen, not a restaurant. I chose that on purpose. In a dining room, I am a woman who has spent 40 years making sure nothing shows. In my own kitchen, I am just a person at a table, and whatever that old discipline is, it doesn't reach across the threshold. I made coffee. I put out the good cups, because that's automatic. Walt took the truck to the hardware store without being asked, which was his way of saying he knew. They came at 9:30. Melissa had a folder with her. "I brought the seating," she said, before her coat was off. "I thought we could look at where to put you. I was thinking not at the head. That's too much. But somewhere people can get to you. Sit down, honey." Dean sat first. He always does what he's told in this house. He's 43, and he still turns into a boy at that table. I took the card out of my cardigan pocket and put it face up between the cups. Melissa looked at it. Then she looked at me. She didn't touch it. "I want to say 4 things," I said. "Then you can say whatever you want." Nobody stopped me. "On the 4th of September, you told me it was 6 people, nothing special. The folio says 22 covers. The 7th of August was 19. The 2nd of October was 24. Dean's head came around. "2nd. Last December, you went into Halloran's the week after Christmas and told Teddy Nakashima you were handling my events. And you put a standing hold on the garden room for the first Thursday of every month. That line under my handwriting is yours. Frances. Third, Dana Pruitt gave you $2,500. She called me to thank me for it. I let her go on, thinking it was true, because I didn't understand it yet, and that's a thing I did, and I'll answer for it. My voice was fine. I'd been worried it wouldn't be. She's not the only one. She named 11 others. Dean said, $2,500? Fourth, I didn't look away from Melissa. Your website says 3 decades of Northern Michigan hospitality leadership. It doesn't say my name anywhere. You were careful about that. The kitchen clock is loud. I've never noticed it before or since. It's not like that, Melissa said. Tell me what it's like. It's Frances, that's not. She put both hands flat on the table, and I recognized the gesture, and it went through me sideways to see my own trick coming back at me from somebody else. That's a network. That's how they work. Everybody has advisors. Everybody has people in their corner. Nobody lists. You don't put people's names on a website. That's not how it's done. It's a signal. It's shorthand. Shorthand for me. Shorthand for experience. Whose? She didn't answer that. You've never once asked me what it is, she said instead. Not one time. Do you know what it actually is? I asked Dean. You asked Dean? She laughed, one syllable of it. Do you hear that? I did, actually. I'd asked the safe one. I've been doing that his whole life. It's a supper club and a referral network for women who run small businesses in this town. Women who are drowning. France's women with flower shops and studios and 2 employees, and they pay in, and they get access, and they get each other. And I have built that from a laptop at my kitchen table. And what does the money buy them? The dinners, the programming, She stopped. She heard it herself. 12 women, $30,000, and the answer was dinner. And what have I bought them? You've bought them a reason to trust it. She said it like it was a gift I'd given without noticing, and the terrible thing is that, in her head, I think it was. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get a woman in this town to write a check for anything? And then I say, the room's on the Alden account, and it's fine, and they exhale. That's not a lie. That account was yours. Your name was on it. I didn't invent one single thing. Dana Pruitt believes I'm half in. And she stopped again. And I watched her decide not to finish it, because there was nowhere for that sentence to go. Then she went somewhere else. I have gotten you invited to more in the last year than you've done since you retired. Do you understand that? You sat in this house for 3 years, Frances. You sat here. And I bring you into things, and people ask about you, and you light up like a girl. Melissa, Dean said. No. She turned on him, and it wasn't cruelty. It was something closer to exhaustion coming through the wall. Do you have any idea what it's like to be the only person in this family trying to build something? You go to a job, your mother's retired, your father's retired. I'm out there every day trying to make something out of nothing, and I haven't had a paycheck since March. The clock again. She heard it about a half second after she said it. I watched it land in her, physically a small backward motion, the chin coming in. She looked at Dean. Dean said, March? He didn't raise his voice. That's the thing. He said one word, the month, with a question mark on it, and it did more damage than anything I had said in 20 minutes. My son sat at my kitchen table and asked his wife what month it was, and I had to look at the window. I was going to tell you when it was, she said, when there was a number to tell you. I didn't want to bring you a problem. I wanted to bring you 8 months. Dean, I said the only sentence I'd actually prepared, and I said it quietly, because I've never once needed volume to end a conversation. You didn't borrow the room, Melissa. You borrowed me. She sat back. You put the hold on that room the week after Christmas. I said. That's 3 months before March. She looked at the table for a while. They cut my territory in half in November, she said. I could see it coming. I thought if I had something built by the time it happened, it wouldn't be a thing that happened to me. That was the truest sentence she said all morning, and I heard it, and I've kept it. And then she reached for her phone, and I understood that she still, even then, thought this was a conversation about whether I'd be at a dinner. Okay, she said. Okay, I hear you. I'll take the whole thing off the website. I'll never say your name again, and Francis, look at me after the 6th. After this last one, it's done. It's your name, and I'll never touch it again. She stood up and went out to the porch to call and confirm the numbers. The storm door closes now. It still doesn't seal, and Dean never did come back with that sweep. I heard her give her name. I heard her say the 6th. I heard about 4 seconds of nothing. Then, no, it's a standing hold. It's been there since December. Nothing. Since when? Nothing. Then who released it? She came back in with the phone still in her hand and stood in my kitchen doorway, and she was white around the mouth. You closed it. Wednesday. They've got it as a wedding block, through May. Her voice went up and then came down again, and she got hold of it. Francis, the invitations are out. They went out Monday. There are 14 women who have a card in their hand with that room printed on it. I know. Then call him. She was already nodding, working it. The way you do. Teddy. He'd do it for you. One phone call, you say you made a mistake. No. You don't understand what this does to me. I do, actually. And then she asked. And I want to be fair to her, because it's the only time in 11 years I have heard Melissa ask for something instead of arrange it. Just give me November. Her eyes were wet. One night, then it's over. No. She waited for the rest of it. The explanation, the softening, the because. The part where I make it easier to hear. I have spent my whole life supplying that part. I have handed people the reason so they wouldn't have to sit in the plain fact of a no. I didn't say anything else. She got her coat. At the door she said the ugly thing, and she said it in a scheduling voice, which is how the ugly things always come. I don't know what Tuesdays are going to look like for a while. I let it stand. I didn't answer it. There was nothing to answer. Dean walked her out and then came back in and stood with his hand on the back of the chair, not sitting. Mom. He wasn't looking at me. If it had just been the name, if there'd been no money in it, would you have told me? I thought about lying. I thought about it seriously, because he's my son, and he was standing in my kitchen with his whole life coming apart in the driveway. I don't know, I said. He nodded slowly, like that was about what he'd expected, and he took his keys off the hook and went. The house got very quiet. The card was still on the table, between 2 cups of coffee that nobody had touched. There was one thing left that was mine to do, and it had been mine to do for 2 weeks, and I had been telling myself I needed to understand the shape of it first. I understood the shape of it now. I picked up the phone and called the flower shop. Dana picked up on the second ring, cheerful, with the shop noise behind her. I'm not backing it, I said. I never was. I'd never heard the name until you said it to me on the phone 2 weeks ago, and I let you go on thinking otherwise while I worked out what was happening. I'm sorry it took me 2 weeks to say so. There was a pause, with a cooler door closing in it. Okay, she said. Then, okay. I gave her the names of the 2 women she'd mentioned, who I could actually reach, Bev Langtree, who folded napkins for me for 9 years, and a Caro girl I'd hired out of high school, and I called both of them myself that afternoon and said the same 4 sentences. That was all of it. I didn't post anything. I didn't write a letter. I didn't call anybody who hadn't already called me. 3 phone calls, 20 minutes, all told. It doesn't take more than that. A founding member with a room that isn't hers, and a backer who says she isn't one, does not survive the first honest question. And once one woman asks it out loud, the rest ask it that same week. 14 had paid, in the end. Bev got me the real number in December, and it was 14. 9 of them asked for their deposits back before the month was out. The November dinner happened in a banquet alcove at a chain steakhouse off South Airport Road, under a television with the sound off. 6 people came. I know that because Bev told me, and I didn't ask. Verdant House folded in January. It never announced anything, because there was nobody left to announce it to. Melissa paid all 14 back over 14 months. She took a job with a dental supply distributor in Cadillac, and she drives it. And by all accounts, she's good at it, because she is good at things. That was never the question. She has never apologized to me in any way I could verify. She said the word sorry once, in April, in a doorway, attached to a sentence about scheduling. I took what it was, and didn't ask it to be more. Dean and Melissa went to counselling in Sutton's Bay for most of a year. I have no idea whether it worked. They're still married. He looks older. Some marriages come back different, and you can't tell from the outside whether different is better, and it isn't my business, and I have made myself stop guessing at it. Tuesdays went dark for 9 weeks. That was the price. And I knew it was going to be the price when I stood in an empty dining room and said, "Give me nothing back," knowing didn't help. I did Tuesdays anyway, in my own house, which is a stupid thing to admit. 3:15 would come, and I'd be standing in the kitchen. They came back in March. Dean set it up, and he set it up with me directly, which is the part that matters. I drive. 3:15 at the school. Home by 5:30. Every week, on the calendar. Not offered when things are good. Not withdrawn when they aren't. It runs through Dean, and it runs on a schedule, and nobody has to ask anybody for it. Poppy is 10 now. She got the crossover part of that hand clap rhyme out of me eventually. It took until June. And there's one rule I made out of all of it, and I said it out loud so I'd have to keep it. I don't let my name stand anywhere. I'm not standing myself. Not on a website. Not on an advisory line. Not in a box of cards in a restaurant. Sitting there 23 years past its usefulness, because it flattered me to be remembered. That part was mine. Nobody made me leave that account open. I left it open because I liked walking past a building and knowing I was still in the file. The card lived in the kitchen drawer with the takeout menus and the twist ties, which is where I put it that Saturday, and where I left it, because I didn't want a ceremony about it. In April, I took it out. Cream stock, soft at the corners. My 40-year-old handwriting, bearing down hard. Alden, F. Ashmont Overflow House, approve all. And underneath, in her pen, the December line. I found a black pen in the drawer, and I added one line at the bottom, in the hand I have now, which is smaller and lighter than the hand I had then. April 14th, closed. Then I put it back in the drawer, because I've thrown away enough things in my life, and this one is true. The first Thursday in May, Walt and I had dinner in the garden room. I called for it myself in March, like anybody, and got told there was one two-top in the corner at 5:45, or nothing until August. And I said 5:45 would be lovely. I gave the name Alden and spelled it, which the girl on the phone appreciated, and I enjoyed more than I should have. We paid full price. Walt had the whitefish and complained about the price of the whitefish, which is his whole personality in a restaurant, and then ate all of it. That room goes wavy at that hour. The old glass takes the trees outside and bends them, and the light comes through green and slow. And at 5:45 in May, there's nobody in there yet but the two of you and a boy filling water. I put the flow of that room together in 1996 on a piece of graph paper, standing up, with Danny Halloran's father telling me it wouldn't work for a hotel that isn't there anymore, for guests I never met. 14 tables, service on the north side. The two-top in the corner, because you always give somebody the corner. I put that table there. I have walked past it 400 times with a clipboard in my hand. Teddy seated us himself. He came out from the office in the jacket, not the sweater, and he took my coat and he pulled the chair out for me and stood there holding it. And I sat down in it and let him push it in. I designed the corner of that room for 2 people I didn't know, 29 years ago, and then spent 3 decades standing 4 feet from it, making sure their night went well, and it took me until 71 to find out that the chair was mine to sit in the whole time, if I ever stopped lending it out.